Okay, I think we'll make a start. So, welcome to you all on this fine summer day from London for today's Course 5 webinar. We're delighted that you have all chosen to share your next 45 minutes or so with us. I appreciate everyone is working hard and with stretched schedules and busy clients. My name is Joseph Sursok. I manage the European region for Course 5 Intelligence, and I'm pleased to be your host for today. As expected, some basic hygiene considerations to set us up. So today's online conference facility allows us to share some supporting material on screen with you and allows you to submit your questions to the presenters. Our plan is to host about 45 minutes, more or less, at the end of which we will share with you a copy of the material presented and a copy of the Q&A exchanges that have taken place. We've allowed for some Q&A at the end of the session, while of course you don't have to wait till the end to submit your questions. You can submit them at any time through the group chat that you'll find at the bottom of your screen as part of the Zoom setup. Okay, so hygiene section over. I'll progress onto a short 2-line description of Course 5 Intelligence and then move on to the main event. At Course 5, we support digital transformations enabled through analytics, insights, and artificial intelligence. We partner with both large Fortune 500 companies as well as mid-sized firms in key regions, and that would include Europe, Middle East, USA, and APJ. We provide a set of insights-driven solutions and also software accelerators to support our clients' analytics and insights ambitions. And as many of you are interested in the topic, you'll appreciate the analytical ambitions out there seem to have no end, as I'm sure many of you would be nodding right now. Also worth pointing out is that the whole management team at Course 5 have been in the field at one point or another. I've been a consultant previously, as have others. Some have come through the operations route, some have come on client side or in technology, and some have even started their own startups before joining Course 5. We love data, we love analytics, we are problem solvers and are honored by some of our long-standing client relationships that go back a good 15 years. So now on to the bios and the presenters. We are joined today by the Digital Research and Insights Director, Hani Jala, who will walk us through our perspectives of social media sensing and what it could mean for you and your teams. Hani will walk us through SMS through the eyes of clients, including 1 or 2 case studies, time allowing, of course. She has been with Course 5 for several years and has worked with several important clients deploying these solutions in the field in various geographies. Onto our summary agenda. Just to remind everyone why we've chosen this solution area today, partly by the need to make better and more informed decisions through those already made investments in social media. It's a mature area now that's, I think, been going for about 10 years. Many folks have social media teams, they've invested in some platforms, and many are still asking for a lot more value from those investments. So the big focus is purchase considerations today. Many of us have come across the age-old so-called purchase funnel that we all sort of spend hours trying to work out and analyze. And in more recent years, this has been turned upside down due to the many omni-channel dynamics. So it is a great area of interest for our customers, especially when more and more of important customer conversations and considerations are actually taking place in social media, not necessarily where we have a lot of control of. So you're going to be learning about that today. So without further ado, let's explore how big an impact SMS can have for you, and also explore which are the social media analytical avenues worth engineering for in your business. Hani, hopefully you're ready. Over to you.
Thank you, Joseph, for the introduction. Hello, everyone. Thank you for taking your time out and tuning into our webinar. As Joseph mentioned, today we are going to speak to you about customer journey, purchase considerations, and consumer engagement using digital media data. We have all witnessed that the emergence of digital channels has opened new avenues of building relationships, gaining insights, and enhancing those relationships where customers are transforming from being mere consumers to becoming co-creators of overall brand experience. And brands not only need to have an active online presence to make it easier to communicate directly with them, but they also need to drive and enhance consumer engagement to ensure conversion and retention. Measuring and understanding consumer movement through the funnel in turn initiates a relationship between the brand and the consumer, mutually benefiting both. The digital data generated can be leveraged in measuring awareness along with brand consideration factors, which further influence purchase and loyalty, thereby helping brands reduce funnel leakage. This webinar focuses on how, using digital data, we can identify and derive key drivers that influence purchase decision making of customers. We have enabled some of our global brands to identify their product differentiators in comparison with competing brands by delivering high quality and consistent results with business relevant insights. We have provided them with the ability to scale rapidly and the flexibility to scale up and down based on business needs. We have equipped them to deliver insights faster and to be nimble, to drive continuous innovation by leveraging technologies such as AI and ML, and benefited them with improved efficiencies, leveraging automation technologies to reduce manual effort wherever possible. So before we go deeper into the topic, let us look at some of the challenges faced by marketers and consumer insights functions. We often hear these questions or statements from our clients, and I'm sure some of these would find resonance with your having debated to find a solution to the same. One such concern is, my new competitors are already gaining market share. How and why did this happen? How do we tap into dynamic marketplace with ever evolving customer needs? And especially with bigger brands, our clients often express that we have a popular brand, but there is a disconnect between healthy brand and healthy sales. Another key concern area is with the ROI, where they say that we spend already millions on customer research. Are there any alternatives to influencing purchase decisions and improving ROI? It goes further. And one of the key challenges in today's dynamic world, where smartphones have a new high-end version every 6 months, is deciding on new product features. Should we even delay launching? And finally, we get to hear that, oh, we operate online, offline, in social, everywhere. We have funnel leakage, and how can we plug it? So the first thing that we need to understand here is, what is all this new data for us to consider? For any organization, if we see, there are three types of new age data: telemetry, digital, and CRM and sales interaction data, where digital can further be classified as owned, earned, paid, and syndicated. Now, the question is that digital data offers big leverage for understanding and influencing customers, but have you maxed out? The clear way forward is to integrate digital into marketing and consumer insights to stay ahead. However, even with these types of digital data, they are no less. From structured to unstructured, from videos to voice, from chat to images, and from GIFs to emoticons, even the adoption of platforms by brands and consumers varies significantly and adds to the complexity. Well, you could always debate that we've already been gaining consumer insights using traditional methods. What difference additionally does digital data make? So let us look at a few numbers and try to put in perspective the relevance of digital data. Every day, around 500 million tweets, that is 6,000 tweets per second, are sent only on Twitter. Almost 75% purchase decisions are influenced by Instagram. 77% of brand conversations on social media are where people are looking for advice, information, or help. 72% are saying that they have made fashion, beauty, or style related purchases after seeing something on Instagram, with the most purchased categories being clothing, makeup, shoes, and jewelry. Even for customer service professionals, there has been a 2.5 times increase in customer service conversations on Twitter alone. So, yes, the numbers are there. But again, what does it all mean? The thing for us to understand is that It's not just about having online presence and big digital media data, it is what you do with it. Now, let us look at understanding consumer decision making by putting all these different pieces together. The consumer journey spans a variety of touch points by which the consumer moves from awareness to consideration and ultimately to usage and maybe loyalty. A consumer journey in today's world is more complex with multiple interactions across the funnel phases. However, for the sake of simplicity, we have used the traditional funnel representation here. Successful brands focus on developing a seamless experience that ensures that each touch point interconnects and contributes to the overall journey. To differentiate, companies must create resonance between brand and customer experience at every step of the journey, but they often don't. The result is that the brand promises remain unfulfilled and the customer journeys are less distinctive than they could be. Effective journey mapping processes include an outside-in customer-centric perspective, executive commitment, and a focus on insight. The key to success here is to give early attention to collaboration and data capture. Without these, the efforts risk being just check the box exercises that no one really acts on. Brands' engagement with consumers plays an even larger role as a consumer moves from one touch point to another, providing opportunities to keep the brand in consideration set and reduce funnel leakage. Identifying and mapping the unmet needs and wants with each stage or touch point helps in answering the following questions. Where does a brand need to focus in the customer journey to influence buying behavior? How each key moment can be addressed to satisfy the consumer? How to identify purchase blockers and opportunities from disappointed customers and negative discussions? What promotions or offers should be planned based on customer behavioral pattern that leads to more conversion and consumer engagement? Now, this topic, though, can be a series of webinars. Today, we talk about the pre-purchase phase of the journey, specifically concentrating on consumer purchase considerations, identifying them using digital and social data, and their value in strategies for improving consumer engagement. Now, you might be thinking, well, all this is fine in theory maybe, but what can you do using digital data? Can you identify what are the triggers for individual consumer segments, instrumental in developing unmet needs? What are some of the key factors that audience look for while buying products? Are there any complex links between unmet need expressions, emotions, sentiments, and purchase intent? What are the various consideration and non-consideration factors that contribute to brand purchase? And is there any difference in decision making between B2B and B2C? Or are there commonalities across industries? The answer to all these questions is yes, we can identify these using digital data. So what we are doing here is deconstructing the pre-purchase phase itself into smaller decision-making steps and synthesizing information gained from the analysis of digital data. The process works with aggregating relevant information and deriving the following. The triggers a stimulus for purchase, the need state, whether it's basic functional, operational, or vain desires of consumers for the products, the determination of product availability so that it can be in the consideration set for the consumers when they go and look for those products. The emotions associated with the purchase or the need state, the evaluation parameters that lead to a brand being considered, that what is it that people are looking for when they are going to buy a product, the peer opinions or purchase blockers that might have an influence and shift the scale from one brand to another, the ease of buying eventually leading to the purchase. But can you point what's missing here? Something is. Well, it is active consumer engagement at every step of the pre-purchase path, eventually leading a feedback loop into repeat consideration. Once the brands understand these nuances, they are able to strategize on how to engage with the consumers at micro steps before the decision is actually made. And this is where they can influence conversion and find ways to improve engagement. Now, let me take you through a case study of customer journey mapping using digital data. The client was a leading global fashion retailer running an yearly project across multiple markets to understand the evolving nature of consumer journey by segments. The objective was to map end-to-end digital customer journey in retail fashion for Generation Z and millennials in the US, UK, France, and Germany markets across 3 product categories, while identifying customer interactions through the purchase funnel. The end stakeholder was the marketing team. We set up the project to analyze past 18 months historical data across the digital domain in each market, taking into consideration the language nuances in local markets. And within 9 weeks, we were able to deliver the first journey map with differentiated interactions by consumer segments for all markets, and subsequently set up a quarterly refresh process. So in this slide, what now you're going to see would be a sample customer journey map that we derived and synthesized all using social and digital data. We divided the journey into 3 touch points. The first was pre-purchase. Now, the way we defined it was that this phase represented the starting point in a consumer's journey along the path to purchase. It identified the internal and external influences that affect customers' decision-making process, that is their needs, wants, awareness, information gathering, and evaluation parameters for purchasing a product. Now, this touch point typically reflects on a consumer's intent to purchase, and hence it was broken down into consumers' need for a product at a functional and social level. And we also need to understand that this is one of the most important touch points, because pre-purchase is where the actual decision to buy a product is made. Now, for each age segment and each category within that segment, apparel, we identified the triggers that led to the initiation of pre-purchase search, and we identified those triggers from the conversations in the data set. Now, in addition to that, certain factors were identified as the evaluation parameters, like I said, and they had a bearing on the consumer proceeding to the purchase phase of the journey. The second touch point was purchase, which was the first moment of truth. The activities carried out here while making a purchase and the ease of buying determined the interactions in this phase. And it ended where the payment has been made. That's how the definition of the phase went. Now, to understand this behavior from the conversational data, because it's all textual conversations or posts that we were analyzing, certain themes were identified. These included consumer expressions around the channel of purchase, whether it was online, offline, or if there were expressions of checking the product both online and offline before making the purchase, or any other expression related to the same. Product availability in terms of being able to find the relevant products online, or finding issues with the product being sold out before the purchase is completed, or orders being canceled, or conversations related to restocking the product. Overall website experience while making the purchase in terms of security, design, and performance of the website, in finding relevant products and issues while making the payment. Fulfillment preferences such as delivery location and speed of delivery chosen at the time of making the purchase, and the payment modes available or used were some of the themes that we identified and concentrated on. The next phase was the post-purchase phase, which is the second moment of truth. This phase was where the post-purchase evaluation actually starts after the payment has been made, and it carries on even after the product usage has commenced. It might lead to feedback and or product exchange or refund. Now, to understand the customer's post-purchase service related experience, themes were identified from the conversations, and they were bucketed into expressions around returns, interaction or engagement with the customer service, and delivery and shipment. Similarly, to understand the product experience, themes were identified and bucketed into expressions around product features such as style, quality, comfort, and post-usage evaluation of the price of the product. In addition to the product features, a significant number of the conversations were around the social sharing of the purchase on social media channels, where customers were just displaying or expressing or sharing about their recent purchase. The results from the study were compared and validated against the primary research findings. And with the holistic insights, the client was able to achieve approximately around 10% cost optimization on media spends and around 20 BPS increase in consumer experience. Consumer engagement and feedback went up by 1.5 times across social media channels. We provided recommendations to them and to identify and implement strategies at each touch point across interactions. One thing to note here is that the way the recommendations and insights were provided were to make sure that we don't just concentrate at the start and the end of the journey. At the end of each touch point, whatever the interactions were, how is it that when a customer moves from pre-purchase to purchase, what interactions and what engagement can be driven during that transition? So the strategies and the recommendations were around that. And the client was able to identify and understand and validate the behavioral nuances of Generation Z versus millennials, the decision-making triggers and criteria for them. Okay, so we've gone through the concepts and a case example. It does make a strong case for using digital media data, but we need to remember that it's not a panacea for all, so beware. Where the digital media data accelerator provide opportunities of wider reach. Now, accessibility is a prime benefit of publicly available digital data, with data volumes ranging from thousands to millions over a very short period of time. Longitudinal analysis is another benefit or an accelerator where information can be collected historically as well as on an ongoing basis. And the differentiated period of time, this long period of time, the behavior changes in consumer preferences or any other trends can be observed, identified, and analyzed. Faster response time, it is one of the key things which is associated with any digital data project, because there is instant access to customer feedback, which is ideal to understand customers' initial reactions to a change in the brand or its marketing strategy. Cost optimization, a digital data analysis is comparatively less expensive than the other traditional methods. It helps in decreasing the amount of budget spent, and the same can be allocated for marketing strategies, organizational strategy, and development. And finally, targeted insights. Now, it enables personalized and targeted insights into the specific persona of the consumers that are being targeted, or any specific domain or subdomain or sub area where the interest area is. The sample population can be further segmented based on, how high or low value customers, product usage, etc. Having looked at the accelerators, we also need to be aware of certain pitfalls. Now, with digital and social media, social desirability effects cannot be completely avoided. Now, what do I mean by social desirability effects is that consumers sometimes exhibit behavior which is different online versus how they are in real life. And this is something that cannot be completely avoided, even with very high volumes, and it should be taken into consideration while interpreting the results, and we need to remember this. Robustness and quality control of data needs to be ensured thoroughly, because we are talking about textual data, which is aggregated from the web. So the chances of having a very high amount of noise is there. So how the noise removal process works, what is the robustness and the quality control of the data, that needs to be thoroughly ensured. Representativeness of the data also should be kept in mind. It's very important, because here we are talking only about the people who are online and are vocal, who form this population subset. And this is not representative of the people who are, the entire population. There are people who are not online, and there are people who are online but are not vocal. So this kind of work can lend support to offline or physical survey research, but cannot be a replacement of it. And complete demographic representation might be really difficult, because there are limitations with publicly available data, and people don't often go and share such information willingly. Now, another thing to be kept in mind is with respect to data privacy and the aggregate level of insights, because even though here the volume advantage is working in favor of statistical significance, because the data might be in thousands or millions, owing to privacy regulations and concerns and privacy settings, we are only looking at publicly available data, which is unsolicited. So there will be gap in this data, and it would render the insights at an aggregate level, because often it might not be possible to observe all relevant data points for each individual. Hence, the insights would mostly be at an aggregate level. Now, after this, everything that we've seen, the question is, what value does course 5 bring to the table, and what is our proven methodology? Now, at course 5, we've developed a methodical approach to drive analysis, which takes in best practices from social media mining and market intelligence and combines them with advanced analytics for ensuring quality of insights at scale. Our key differentiators include exhaustive data coverage. Now, we provide multi-source data aggregation from blogs, social media posts, including niche forums, syndicated sources, third-party data vendors. We integrate all of them before we do the analysis and then come up with the complete insights. Multi-language market support is one of the key differentiators for us because today we are supporting around 24 languages. We take care of the native, written, spoken, and slang nuances of as it goes on social media. People are talking often in slangs instead of complete language and sentences. And we also take care of transliteration versions of a language. Now, when I say transliteration, what I mean is people often, especially in local language markets, they often go on the web and write maybe in Roman script, but in their own, local language. So that is something, if we don't aggregate that data, we are missing out on valuable insights. So we do provide support for that. Qualitative insights from unstructured data is another thing that we have been appreciated by a lot of our clients. And faster turnaround time of the projects from social media and digital media data is something which adds value to all the other things that I've spoken about so far. Now, Course 5 has its own social media research lab, which is aligned on asking a lot of difficult questions and emerging questions to the problems which are there today. And we keep asking these questions to ourselves to find solutions, like how to manage new data streams, either through API or other forms. How to find deep insights with limited data on new topics or areas. For example, human bionics. How to integrate other research practices in social media research. How to develop innovative solutions for driving value to the customer. And our efforts are focused in the following areas, where we look at ontology, which is a proprietary methodological framework that we have developed that shows relationship between data and social structures. We have moved beyond sentiments to emotions, where we look at an emotional quotient index, which shows consumers' emotional intelligence via a score or index in any given scenario. We manage unstructured data, where we are using mining softwares and LLPs to find meaning in huge set of text, images, videos, emojis, etc. And we apply advanced AI techniques, where we are using some of our proprietary advanced data science algorithms for predictive analytics. Now, there's a lot more to making sense of consumers and the rationale behind their decision making. What we have presented today is but one slice of the different kinds of work we have done, and all that is both interesting and possible with the new age data. So at this point in time, I would say that's it for me. I would close it here. I'm ready to take any questions that you might have on today's webinar, and please feel free to ask any questions you have. Thank you again for your time. Over to you, Joseph.
Many thanks, Honey. Thank you for the presentation, the exciting walkthrough, as always, providing us different perspectives, both the process, the rationale, as well as the more practical side. At this stage, we would like to make the most of the remaining time we will have together for some final questions our listeners may have. Some have been presented, so I will just go to those in a minute. But if any of you wish to present other questions to Honey or to myself, please do so through the group chat feature on Zoom. So Honey, I don't know if you can see, but there's a few questions that have come in. I will read them out, and if you're okay, maybe you can address them one by one with some practical insights and advice.
Sure, Joseph.
Sure. Okay, so start with the first one. So the first one is coming from Ivan. Okay, so this is sort of what I mentioned at the beginning. Many people have already invested in social media listening and deployed tools and dashboards. My question is around coexistence. Do we evolve the current program to this level of SMS, Or are you suggesting we run a separate and parallel program in this area?
Okay. So before we even go to the point of running a separate and parallel program, the first step here is always to evaluate the current maturity of the existing social media listening program. Pardon me, social media listening program that the organization had. What tools and dashboards have they, that they deployed, and what is the feasibility of them? Understand the current business objectives and organization goals that with a social media listening program, what is it that the organization is trying to achieve? Once we have that understanding, then we can see where are the gaps in the current program where social media listening is not able to provide, either the ROI or the results which are expected, and then come up with a plan which would fit best to every organization's needs. So I don't know, Evan, what your organization is into. You've not mentioned here, but depending on what domain or what what type of product your organization is selling, what type of industry you are in, a specific social media listening program can be carved out for you. Now, to take it one step further, is that if you want to see, like I'll take an example. Like if you're running a primary research or a brand tracking program, and you want to identify how to use social media sensing, how to bring in. So there can be different ways of doing it. You can either do a quick social scan. You can first identify what are the metrics that your organization is interested in. Around that, you can do a quick social scan. What are the results which are coming? You can use those results and inform your brand tracking questionnaires and how you run those, that program, and inform that program from this, get the results. And from there, you can also do a quick validation. Another way could be you run a primary research, you come up with certain insights from there, you use that to inform your social media, sensing setup. And from there, you go and see what's the pulse of the market and get insights from there. So that would also help you. And the third way could be you run these two programs parallel for the metrics which can be derived from social, and then you cross-validate the results. So that way is whichever is way is suitable for your organization. The results that you are getting would be much more richer and holistic, so that the decisions and actions which are coming out of it are more relevant. I hope I've been able to answer your question. If not, please do shoot another question my way. Joseph?
Cool, thank you. So the next one is from Cheryl. Thank you, Ivan, and thank you, Cheryl. Have you done this in the FMCG industry? So clearly we had a retail example in the case study. And if so, how long did you take to gain actual results and business benefits?
Okay. So the first question answer is yes. We have done this for the FMCG industry. We have worked with some of the really big global clients in the food and beverage industry. And I'll take the example of one such client. But before that, to answer your question about how long did it take to gain actual results, typically, depending on the depth of the analysis required and what metrics you want to derive from the data, it takes between 2 to 4 weeks on an average. However, if it is something which is much more deeper, where we'll need to synthesize a lot of data and come up with the insights, it might vary. And that's something that works out once we have a business question. And for these kind of insights, it's not just a one-time exercise. It might be a one-time exercise, or it could be something which is running on an ongoing basis. Now, coming to the example for the FMCG industry, one of our clients had done a very large exercise from a primary research perspective and identified at a global level 7 demand spaces. Now, they had defined these personas of these different demand spaces, and what were the target consumers in each of those. What they came to us with was that they identified 2 or 3 such demand spaces where they wanted us to go to digital, use digital data and identify micro demand spaces there, where for each of those different types of personas within each of those demand spaces, they wanted us to understand, like, what the behavior of those people, the attitudes and habits. So what do these people do? Where do they go? And, what's the entire socialization journey? How do they consume these products? Where do they consume? With whom? Like it's friends, family, with coworkers, or with somebody else. Is it indoors or is it outdoors? What do they like to pair? The pairing dynamics. Like what other foods do they like to have? What flavors do they like? What time of day do they like to have these kind of things? So in that way, we were able to go and aggregate these conversations and this data and synthesize this information from them. What it helped them do is it helped them first understand, like within a particular demand space, like happy social or maybe fun times together, what's happening within fun times together, what are the different nuances that goes on in that demand space, how they can target specifically consumers within that demand space, what could be their campaign strategies, how they can approach these people, what promotions and offers can they come up with. So these kind of things and other things that sort of inform their marketing strategy, they were able to achieve out of it. And certainly cost benefits, because sometimes when you run these big primary research studies, the time it takes for the results to come out is too long for you to take a decision. Joseph?
Thanks, Honey. So yeah, on that last point, one of the big asks we get is time to market, i.e. time of the information that we can turn around. And as Honey mentioned earlier, we're looking at number of weeks as opposed to number of months for these large research programs. So a big advantage. Thank you, Cheryl. The next one is from Natalie. I think you mentioned purchase hurdles in your talk. I think you referred to it as purchase blockers. Could you please expand on that?
Sure. So you rightly said that purchase blockers are like purchase hurdles, but we need to bring in a little more context here with respect to a customer journey. Now, the way we have seen the journey, like the consumers are moving from pre-purchase to purchase and then post-purchase. Now, there's something happening there, and that is what we are trying to understand, that leads either to a conversion or not. Now, what are those things? Some could be basic things like, they didn't like the product itself, or is it that maybe the needs were not satisfied? But other than that, what's happening? For instance, if somebody has decided a brand or a product and then they go and search for it, and I'm taking an example of an online shopping journey because everybody would be able to relate to it. If somebody goes online and searches for a product, now they are able to find it, but the website where they go and search for it and want to buy, it's not the ease of that website ease of use of that website is not that good, so they are not able to make a purchase, and then they just maybe lose interest if it's a product where it's not that much needed. So that could be a purchase blocker. Another thing could be that they want to buy a product, but the price is really too high for them, and there is no other option, maybe even for an EMI, that they can consider buying that product. So they might probably lose interest, go to another competitor. So another thing could be that maybe the kind of payment options that they wanted are not there, the delivery options are not there, or any other thing could be. So these are the purchase blockers which don't allow a consumer to move from one stage of the journey to another. And that is what we try to identify from these conversations. Now, one thing that I would like to mention here is that this is not only specific to a pre-purchase stage. There might be certain blockers which are specifically within the pre-purchase stage. There might be certain blockers when people are going through that entire purchase process, they might face that. And the third thing could be that, even during the post-purchase phase, when they have gone and, bought the product, but they've had a bad experience, they might not want a replacement. They might just want a refund. So what are these different small nuances? So that's what I meant by purchase blockers. And then one final thing is peer opinion. That sometimes what happens, and especially with a lot of either high-end products or fashion products, people go online and ask for recommendations. What is in the season? What is the best laptop to buy or best smartphone to buy based on their needs? And what they read online in terms of feedback and in terms of whatever recommendations they are getting. That is something that sometimes can act both either as a facilitator or a purchase blocker. So that is something we also try to identify to, bring as many holistic insights as possible.
Thank you, Honey. Just to mention, a few more questions are piling in, so you may want to shorten some of your answers just to allow for some time here. So the next one is from Sudhakar. What technology platforms does Course 5 use or recommend for finding insights from social media? Do you recommend rule-based or machine learning techniques?
So at Course 5, I would say that we are tool agnostic, and we are sort of technology agnostic as well. What we try to do is we believe firmly that tools and technologies, they are facilitators in trying to derive these insights. So whatever be the business problem that we are dealing with, we take the most fitting tools and technology that would facilitate. For example, there are a lot of, we are talking about social media aggregation. Now, social media or digital data aggregation. It might just happen that the thing that you're trying, let's take the example of customer journey. So in customer journey, you would want to know what's happening on retail websites. You would want to know feedback of people, their reviews, and all these things. So you will get data from Twitter, Facebook, and other places. It's easier to go to different tools and get that data, like Sysomos, Brandwatch, and whatnot. And there might be certain retail websites from where you would want. So for that, you might need to have certain scrapers. You might need to get some syndicated data, or you might need to get some data from GNIP or DataSafe. So all these different data sources, you get the data, you integrate them together in a data lake, and then go on from the analysis. Now, when we go on to the analysis, when we are talking about data models, we're talking about machine learning models and AI, it again depends on the kinds of insights that you are trying to extract out of it. It might just be plain text analytics for some, classification and categorization. For some, you might want to go into a little bit of prediction and more sophisticated insights. So for example, purchase intent. Now, purchase intent is not very straightforward. You will need to quantify your data, use some deep learning models, use some NLP to get the sentiments out of it, and then go and work from that. So from a recommendation perspective, there is no one answer to all. The thing is about getting data from as many different sources, integrating it, and then moving step by step to deconstruct and then analyze. I hope I have been able to answer your questions. I know there is a little bit of dearth of time. In case if you have further question, I can take it on email and then get back to you. By that, you can reach out to us, any of us, Joseph or me, for that.
Thanks, Hani. Moving on to the next one. I work for the third largest shipping company in the world. How do you think I can nurture leads and sell a container on social media? Interesting question.
Can you please repeat that?
Sure. So the company is a shipping company, and Priyanth, who posted the question, is making inquiries about nurturing leads and selling containers. So how can I nurture leads and sell container on social media? It's sort of a side request on the back of purchase considerations, but social media does play a role in that.
Well, yes. Now, social media does play a role in that. The kind of work that we are doing, and then what we are talking about today, we are not identifying people specifically in that. What we are doing is we are, because we have to sometimes also take into consideration, not sometimes, so we have to take into consideration data privacy regulations as well. Now, what data privacy regulations basically talk about is aggregating data and anonymizing it before we, go and doing the analysis. We are basically not taking people's information from there and then providing it to the clients, considering on the regulations and everything. Now, to answer the question, is it possible to identify leads? It is possible to identify leads from social media data depending on people's conversations. But again, it depends from context to context.
Excellent, thank you. And then a follow-up question, which is a B2B question, which I can answer, but I'll let you answer. What social media trends do we foresee in social media, particularly in the B2B segment?
So B2B is a slightly tricky area. We cannot completely say that, first of all, in majority of the industries in B2B, depending on what type of industry it is, again, it might be slightly difficult for us to find consumer conversations if that is what the organization is concentrating on. However, we are often able to go and find conversations related to something or the other in the B2B area. So let me take the example of some of these industries, and then it will put in things in perspective. If you look at defense space, if you look at something which is completely into a very new and upcoming area like autonomous cars or maybe high-tech planes and drones, the chances are the type of conversations that you're trying to get from people it would be from very specific set of people. There might be people who are technology enthusiasts, people who are talking about these things, specifically about defense mechanisms and defense aircrafts. There'll be very few consumer conversations because they are not the consumers also. However, if you want to understand what is the awareness of people about the company related to that, what's come in earned press, what is, their media effectiveness, how do you measure it, all those things, that is something that can be done. If you want to understand the trends in a particular technology which is coming up in the defense space, yes, you can certainly go and analyze that from niche forums. You can get that information. So that is one thing. However, sometimes when you are, even if it is a B2B sector, for instance, if you take an organization which has, which produces ingredients, for example, for fragrances. Now, an organization produces fragrances which can be used in perfumes or in flavors. Now, those things, they are not selling to the end consumer, but the end consumer is going and buying products from some other organization. So we might not be able to find conversations pertaining specifically to that, that organization. But what we might still be able to find is how people react to different flavors. What concerns do they have about, with fragrances, about allergies, about skin, what pairing dynamics can they have, what different things that they can bring in. So these are different things, not directly being spoken about the organization, but being spoken about the work or the thing that they are doing. So from there, what the insights that you derive, you would be able to go and provide some value to them that they can bring in either in new product development or in their marketing strategies or promotions. So from a B2B perspective, again, before no one should be able to answer right at this instant that this is the organization, this is the product or the industry, and I will find the answers. I will find the data. You have to do a feasibility analysis and see whether the data is actually available or not, and then get back to your client for all the different things that can be done. I hope I have been clear. If not, I can still take the question over email, so please do reach out.
Thank you, Hani. So yeah, what I was going to add is that pairing concept. So we happen to have quite a few large technology companies as clients, and some of the conversations there are about their products, whether software or hardware, and then the pairing conversation. So in their purchase considerations, who else are they talking about when they're going through those discussions in forums or in various blogs or in various channels? And so that pairing is your one-off from the actual brand or target product, but it's equally valuable because that's part of the consideration conversation. So, and the same with, other industry sets, whether it is, media or other parts of the B2B landscape. Okay, so I think that's all the questions for today, Hani. So thank you very much. As we mentioned earlier, if you wanted to share more questions, we're very happy to take them. Please send an email, and we will follow on with that. So all that's left for me to do is to thank you all for joining us today and trying to bring this to a close. Time allowing here, we're quite tight. We will be posting the recording and the Q&A on the website. Plus, as mentioned, we will share a copy of the material presented today over email with all the participants, all the registered participants. We look forward to connecting with many of you on future webinars. Again, if you look them up on our website, you'll see what's coming up in the future. Until then, all that remains is to wish you warm regards from the course team, myself and Hani, and to enjoy the rest of your day. Goodbye, and thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.